I want you to just close your eyes for a second and try to picture the ultimate symbol of, rugged American masculinity.
Right. Yeah.
You probably already know exactly who I'm talking about. We're talking about the quintessential cowboy, the fearless war hero.
The guy with that very specific rolling walk, right? And that deliberate drawl.
Exactly. The man who practically personified the Western frontier. It's an archetype that is so instantly recognizable, you really don't even need to say his name.
No, you don't. I mean, it feels like this image is just permanently etched into the cultural bedrock of the country.
It really does. But what if I told you that this towering symbol of grit and frontier toughness was actually born a 13-pound baby named Marion?
Wait, 13 pounds?
Yeah, 13 pounds. And the man that we celebrate as the ultimate American war hero, he famously dodged military service during the single biggest conflict of the 20th century.
It was pretty wild when you think about his movies.
It is. And honestly, this might be my favorite detail in our entire stack of sources for today. He only ended up in Hollywood, completely losing his path to a very respectable law career because of a secret body surfing accident.
A body surfing accident?
Yeah, one that he was literally too terrified to admit to his football coach.
Which is just, I mean, that's the absolute definition of a legacy built on contradictions.
Right, totally.
We're so deeply immersed in the myth of this man that hearing the actual reality of how he got there is, honestly, it's genuinely jarring.
It really is. So welcome to our deep dive into the complex, contradictory, and honestly monumental life of John Wayne.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, our mission is to look at the massive historical record we've gathered to understand how a broke prop boy transformed into a global titan.
Right.
We are going to untangle the carefully constructed myths from the actual man, and we'll examine the complicated, highly polarizing legacy he leaves behind.
Because, when you dig past the surface of these sources, you realize that John Wayne wasn't just a person who showed up on a movie set.
No, not at all.
He was an institution. And building that institution took decades of trial, error, and frankly, just sheer luck.
Yeah, I think the best way to visualize the legend of John Wayne is to think about Mount Rushmore.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right, because when you look at Mount Rushmore from a distance, it looks like it's just always been there, like it's a permanent, natural part of the American landscape.
Sure, just carved by nature.
Exactly. But when you get up close, you realize it didn't just grow out of the soil, it was blasted into existence with dynamite, very deliberate engineering, and just an incredible amount of scaffolding.
Yeah.
So today, we are essentially looking at the dynamite.
I love that. And to understand the engineering of that monument, you really have to start at the foundation. You have to start with a boy whose entire life trajectory was shaped by just a series of happy accidents and failures.
So let's set the scene here. The year is 1907. We are in Winterset, Iowa. The local paper reports the birth of a 13-pound baby boy named Marion Robert Morrison.
Right, the future Duke.
Yep. The family eventually moves out west to Southern California, settling in Glendale. Now, you hear the name John Wayne, and you immediately think of his famous nickname, the Duke.
Right, of course.
And you'd probably assume a name like the Duke comes from, I don't know, some grand aristocratic lineage, or maybe a really tough street fight he won as a kid.
Yeah, you'd think it has this tough backstory.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality in the sources is much more relatable.
It really is.
There was actually a local fireman on his route to school who started calling him Little Duke for one very specific kind of adorable reason.
Oh, I love this part.
Young Marion never went anywhere without his massive Airedale Terrier, and the dog's name was Duke.
So he was literally named after his dog.
Exactly. Marion actually preferred the name Duke over his given name, so he just adopted his dog's name for the rest of his life.
That is just incredible. The ultimate macho man of the 20th century took his name from a childhood terrier. So Duke Morrison grows up. He becomes this tall, imposing athlete. He actually lands a football scholarship to the University of Southern California, USC.
Look, it's a huge deal.
It is, and he's studying pre-law. If you look at him at that exact moment, he is on a crystal clear path to becoming a lawyer.
Right.
And then the body surfing accident happens.
Yeah, so body surfing was it was incredibly popular in Southern California at the time, but also pretty risky. He gets caught in the surf and he breaks his collarbone.
Which is painful enough on its own.
Bad enough, right? But the real issue was his coach at USC, Howard Jones.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Coach Jones was this legendary, wildly intimidating figure in college sports. And Duke was just absolutely terrified of how Jones would react to his star player getting injured doing something as, frivolous as playing in the waves.
Right, because you're on a football scholarship.
Exactly. So what does he do? He lies. He just makes up a completely different story about how it happened to avoid the coach's wrath.
But the lie doesn't really save his shoulder, right? And it certainly doesn't save his scholarship. Because he can't play, he loses his funding.
Yeah, he's out.
He has absolutely no money to pay for USC tuition, so he is forced to drop out. His law career is completely over before he even opens a single law book.
It's crazy how fast it all vanished.
But then there's this incredibly weird twist of fate. Coach Jones, the scary guy, actually feels kind of bad for the kid.
Yeah, he feels a little guilty, maybe?
Right, and Jones is very well connected, so he gives tickets to USC football games to a massive silent film star named Tom Mix and also to the director John Ford.
Okay.
And in exchange for those tickets, they give a totally broke, unemployed Duke Morrison a job on the studio lot, just working as an extra and a prop boy.
Which, you can really see the sheer unadulterated luck involved in his early rise here.
Oh, completely.
He is literally just moving heavy furniture around the set, doing, manual labor as the prop boy, when the director Raoul Walsh spots him.
Just spots him lifting a couch or something.
Pretty much. Walsh is casting a lead for his upcoming 1930 Western epic. It's called The Big Trail. He sees Duke moving props. He really likes his physical presence and just decides right then to cast him as the star.
Wow.
But the studio chief looks at the marquee and decides the name Duke Morrison does not sound like a sweeping, romantic leading man.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really pop on a poster.
Right, and the creation of the name John Wayne might actually be the funniest part of this whole early era.
It's so arbitrary.
It really is. So director Raoul Walsh suggests the name Anthony Wayne, named after the Revolutionary War general Mad Anthony Wayne.
Okay, kind of historical.
But the Fox Studios boss, Winfield Sheehan, he rejects it instantly.
Why?
Because he thinks Anthony sounds, quote, too Italian.
What? That makes absolutely no sense.
I know. So these executives just sit around a table, they throw words against the wall, and arbitrarily decide on John Wayne.
Just like that.
Yeah, and the kicker. Duke Morrison wasn't even in the room.
That's insane.
He literally just walked into the office and found out his entire identity had been permanently changed by a couple of guys smoking cigars.
It really highlights how much of an artificial construction Hollywood was back then. They just manufactured him.
Totally.
But launching the John Wayne brand, it didn't exactly go smoothly at first, did it?
No, it was a disaster. The Big Trail is supposed to be this groundbreaking, monumental film. They shot it in a brand new 70mm widescreen format called Grandeur.
Oh, wow.
And it cost over $2 million to make.
In 1930?
Yeah, 1930.
Yeah.
During the very start of the Great Depression. That was just a staggering amount of money.
But the problem was nobody could actually watch the movie, right?
Exactly. Almost no theaters in the country were actually equipped with the special projectors you needed to show a 70mm widescreen film.
Oh, of course.
And theater owners definitely couldn't afford to retrofit their cinemas right in the middle of the Depression.
Yeah.
So the movie is just a massive, crushing box office flop.
Which completely banishes our newly minted John Wayne right to the absolute basement of Hollywood.
Yeah, he gets dumped into what the industry called Poverty Row.
Poverty Row, that sounds bleak.
It was. These were the lower-tier shoestring budget studios that were just churning out incredibly cheap B-movie westerns.
The schedules were grueling. They would shoot an entire movie in just a few days.
Wow.
He made something like 80 of these horse operas over the next 10 years.
80 movies in 10 years. When you really look at the mechanics of his career, getting banished to those terrible B-movies was probably the greatest thing that could have happened to him.
How do you mean?
Well, because the budgets were so low, he didn't have the luxury of stand-ins or fancy effects. It kind of acted like a minor league training ground where he figured out the actual physics of being a modern action star.
Oh, that's exactly what the historical sources suggest, yeah. He wasn't just coasting in these B-movies. He was actively innovating.
Because they couldn't afford expensive stunt doubles, he partnered directly with a legendary stuntman named Yakima Canutt.
Okay.
And together, they completely revolutionized screen fighting. Because if you watch an action movie from the 1920s, the heroes are all perfectly polite.
Polite? Like how?
Well, the bad guy could throw a lamp or swing a chair, but the hero would only throw this clean, stiff, very polite punch and then just stand back and wait for the villain to get up.
I've seen that. It looks like two Victorian gentlemen boxing in a parlor.
Exactly. And Wayne looked at that and realized, It just looked fake. So he started working with Knut to figure out the camera angles.
Okay, so they changed the geometry of it.
Right. Knut realized that if you throw a punch past the actor's chin, right toward the camera lens, and the actor snaps his head back at the same time, it looks like a devastating hit.
Even though they didn't touch.
Exactly. And Wayne started throwing chairs, kicking people when they were down, fighting dirty. He allowed the good guy to be as ruthless as a barroom brawler in order to win.
So he essentially invented the gritty realism of modern action cinema.
He really did.
Mm-hmm.
Audiences had never seen a leading man fight like that before. And all of that physical mastery finally pays off in 1939.
Right, because his old friend, director John Ford, brings him back.
Yep. John Ford elevates him back to the A-list by casting him as the archetypal everyman in the massive hit Stagecoach.
So he finally scales the mountain. He becomes a mainstream, undeniable superstar.
Yeah.
But literally the moment he reaches the top, the real world just crashes in. World War II breaks out.
Yeah, and this changes everything.
Wayne is 34 years old when Pearl Harbor happens, and he receives a 3A family deferment. Now, for the listener, you really have to picture the landscape in Hollywood at this exact moment.
Right, the contrast is stark.
You have all these A-list peers, Jimmy Stewart, Clark Gable, Henry Fonda. They are all enlisting and going off to fight.
Yeah, dropping their careers entirely.
But John Wayne, the man who would eventually become the absolute face of the American military on screen, he stays in Hollywood.
And this is undoubtedly one of the most heavily debated chapters of his entire life. Our sources show that Republic Studios, where he was under this ironclad contract, they actively intervened.
They forced him to stay.
Well, Republic wasn't a mega studio like MGM. Wayne was their only major meal ticket. If he left to fight, the studio faced genuine financial ruin.
Oh, wow.
So the president of Republic Studios actually threatened Wayne with a massive career-ending lawsuit if he walked away to enlist. The studio even formally wrote to the draft board to request that his deferment be maintained.
That's intense. Though, to be fair to the historical record here, the U.S. National Archives do show that he applied to serve in the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA.
Yes, that's true.
And he also spent 3 months doing USO tours in the Pacific, visiting bases and hospitals. He even carried out an assessment mission for the head of the OSS to see if General MacArthur's staff was somehow hindering intelligence work.
Right, and he got an OSS certificate of service for that.
He did. But the inescapable reality is, while his peers were literally storming beaches, he never served in combat.
And that reality absolutely haunted him. According to multiple accounts in our sources, this failure to serve in the military became the deepest, most painful wound of his life.
Really?
Yeah. His third wife, Pilar, wrote very candidly about this in her memoirs. She explicitly connected his intense patriotism in the following decades directly to this guilt.
What did she say?
She wrote, quote, "He would become a super patriot for the rest of his life trying to atone for staying home."
Wow, a super patriot trying to atone, it really makes you rethink his entire legacy, you know?
How so?
Well, if you look at it psychologically, you have to wonder if his hyper-American, aggressive, macho on-screen persona, like the walk, the authoritative voice, the whole package, was actually a lifelong overcompensation.
I see what you mean.
Did he feel an obsessive need to play the ultimate hero on screen specifically because he felt he failed to be one when the world actually needed him?
That is a fascinating way to look at it. It certainly contextualizes that obsessive drive he had. He was constantly editing and optimizing the quote-unquote character of John Wayne.
Right.
And that drive didn't just fuel his politics. It fundamentally shaped a highly specific acting style and, honestly, a personal life full of bizarre contradictions.
Okay, let's talk about the acting style. Because he wasn't a normal actor.
No. For instance, he completely rejected method acting. At the time, method acting was taking over New York and Hollywood.
Right, Marlon Brando, James Dean.
Exactly. Actors were dredging up their own childhood trauma to cry on screen, bringing this intense emotional brooding to their roles.
And Wayne looked at that and essentially called it nonsense, right?
Pretty much. He referred to himself not as an actor, but as a reactor.
A reactor.
Yeah. He argued that bad actors act all over the place, while good actors simply react logically to the situation in front of them. He famously said, "I read dramatic lines undramatically."
Which is such a brilliant distillation of his style. And that actually brings us to the health crisis that altered his acting style in a way that literally no one could have predicted.
Oh, this is such a wild turning point.
Right. So he had been a heavy chain smoker for decades. And in 1964, he is diagnosed with lung cancer.
Yeah.
And fun fact, he actually coined the term the big C as a euphemism for cancer.
Wait, he invented that phrase?
He did. He used it specifically because he wanted the public to stop being so terrified of the word cancer that they'd avoid preventative exams. So he undergoes this massive surgery and has his entire left lung removed, along with 2 ribs.
Which, most people would think losing a lung would completely end an action star's career.
Absolutely.
But the legendary director Howard Hawks made a really fascinating observation about this. He noted that losing a lung actually made John Wayne a significantly better actor.
Okay, you have to explain that. How does losing an organ responsible for your breath support improve your dialogue?
Well, because of the missing lung, Wayne simply did not have the breath capacity he used to have. He physically could not push out a long, sweeping monologue.
Ah, okay.
He was forced to pause for breath in the strangest, most unconventional places, right in the middle of a sentence.
Wow.
And Hawks pointed out that this physical limitation was terribly effective because it forced the audience to lean in. You were just hanging on his every word because you never quite knew when the second half of the sentence was going to drop.
It's exactly like a jazz musician.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about it. If a jazz musician has a hand injury or some physical limitation, it forces them to play the notes with an entirely new, unpredictable rhythm.
Oh, I love that comparison.
Wayne's missing lung basically became a physical metronome that nobody else in the theater could hear. It created a totally unique cadence to his dialogue.
That's spot on. And that unique on-screen rhythm was matched by a deeply unpredictable off-screen life, too. The sources paint a picture of a man who really defies the simple cowboy stereotype.
Oh, totally.
Like, he was deeply fond of literature. His favorite authors were Charles Dickens and Agatha Christie.
Which is not what you expect from the guy swinging bar stools.
Not at all. And he was a fanatic chess player.
Yes, the chess detail is brilliant. There's a story from biographer Michael Munn where Wayne was asked by a reporter about the actor Rock Hudson's sexuality.
Right.
And Wayne apparently just waved off the question and replied, "Who the hell cares if he's a queer? The man plays great chess."
It's just such a pragmatic, unexpected response.
It really is. He also wore a toupee for most of his career and just completely owned it. A student at Harvard once aggressively asked him if his hairpiece was real mohair, trying to embarrass him.
And how did he react?
He didn't even blink. He just fired back, "Sir, that's real hair. Not mine, but real hair."
That's hilarious. But, the sources also reveal the darker coping mechanisms he relied on.
Yeah, we have to mention that.
According to a memoir by Hollywood editor Sam Osteen, studio directors knew they had to tightly schedule around his habits. They made sure to shoot all of Wayne's important dialogue scenes before noon.
Because of the drinking.
Right. By the afternoon, his heavy drinking would catch up with him, and he was known to become a, quote, mean drunk who was very difficult to direct.
Which sort of naturally transitions us to the part of his life that is the most jagged and difficult to navigate. While his acting style was carefully calibrated, his public political persona became increasingly blunt, heavily polarized, and highly controversial.
Yes. And factually speaking, just looking strictly at the historical record impartially here, John Wayne was a highly vocal conservative and a staunch anti-communist.
Right.
In the 1940s and 50s, he helped run the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, and he was a prominent driver of the Hollywood blacklist.
Which meant he actively participated in denying employment to actors and writers who were suspected of having communist ties.
Exactly. He even turned down the lead role in the classic Western High Noon over this.
He didn't just turn it down, he despised that movie.
He really did, because the plot of High Noon is about a sheriff begging his town for help to fight a gang, and the townspeople all turn their backs out of fear.
Right, and Whiten believed that was an un-American allegory criticizing the blacklist. In his mind, true Americans helped each other out on the frontier, so he saw the script as a direct insult to the country.
But even within those rigid political stances, there are massive contradictions.
Always contradictions with him.
Always. Despite being Hollywood's most famous conservative, he voted for the Democratic president Franklin D. Roosevelt. He openly expressed admiration for Harry Truman.
And the Panama Canal thing.
Yes. Most surprisingly, in the 1970s, he broke entirely with the conservative establishment to support the Panama Canal Treaty.
Yeah, he sided with Democratic President Jimmy Carter, arguing that the Panamanians had a sovereign right to the canal.
Which deeply angered conservative leaders like Ronald Reagan. It actually brought Wayne hate mail from his own fans for the first time in his life.
But the most controversial part of his legacy, without a doubt, stems from an infamous interview he gave to Playboy magazine in May of 1971.
Yes, this is a major part of the record.
In this interview, Wayne made headlines for his blunt, completely unfiltered opinions on social issues and race. To quote the transcript impartially, he said, quote, "I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility."
Yeah.
He also stated he felt no guilt about the taking of land from Native Americans. He called it, quote, "just a matter of survival," claiming there were great numbers of people who needed new land and the Indians were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves.
And those comments, they did not just fade into the archives.
No, they didn't.
As the cultural landscape shifted, that 1971 interview sparked major protests decades later. In 2020, student activists at his alma mater, USC, successfully pushed for the removal of an exhibit dedicated to Wayne.
Right.
There have also been ongoing, heavily debated campaigns to rename John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California, directly citing those comments made in the Playboy interview.
And while we are examining the historical record regarding these controversies, we also have to address a massive piece of Hollywood mythology from 1973 involving the Oscars.
Oh, the Sachin Littlefeather story.
Exactly. The story goes that when Marlon Brando won Best Actor, he sent a Native American civil rights activist named Sachin Littlefeather to refuse the award on his behalf.
Right. Most people know that part.
But the urban legend claims that John Wayne was waiting in the wings and was so enraged by her speech that he had to be physically restrained by 6 security guards to stop him from assaulting her on stage.
Yeah, that story became incredibly famous. It's often repeated as absolute fact.
But is it fact?
Well, a deep journalistic investigation conducted in 2022 looked at all the available evidence and found that this event was highly, highly unlikely.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The investigation revealed that Littlefeather had no line of sight to witness this alleged altercation. And more importantly, there was absolutely no contemporary reporting of it from anyone at the Oscars that night. The story essentially just grew as an urban legend through years of repeated exaggeration, which really shows how quickly myths attach themselves to a figure as large as Wayne.
So when you look at all this source material laid out on the table, it leaves you wondering, how do you reconcile a man who contains such multitudes?
It's tough.
Right. A man who deeply loves Dickens, plays chess with Marlene Dietrich, and supports the Panama Canal handover, yet aggressively drives the Hollywood blacklist and proudly gives that incredibly prejudiced Playboy interview.
Reconciling those wildly conflicting sides is exactly what makes evaluating John Wayne's legacy so difficult for historians today. He simply refuses to fit neatly into a single box.
Yeah.
And his final act really underscores that complexity.
He makes his last movie, The Shootist, in 1976.
Right.
And in a really tragic case of life imitating art, he plays an aging gunfighter who is dying of cancer. He eventually enrolls in a cancer vaccine study, but he passes away from stomach cancer on June 11th, 1979, at the age of 72.
And in one last surprising twist, shortly before his death, this rugged symbol of pure self-reliance converts to Roman Catholicism.
Wow.
Yeah. And when you look at the epitaph he requested for his tombstone, it speaks volumes about the image he wanted to leave behind.
What was it?
He requested the Spanish phrase, feo, fuerte y formal, which translates to ugly, strong, and dignified.
Ugly, strong, and dignified. You know, whatever your view of him, it's really hard to argue with the sheer scale of the cultural footprint he left behind.
Oh, it's massive.
After his death, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor in the United States. He appeared in the top 10 box office poll for an unprecedented 25 years.
25 years?
Yeah, and he is the only actor to appear in the annual Harris poll of most popular film actors every single year, even decades after his passing.
Which really brings us to the ultimate takeaway from all these sources. Like, why does looking closely at the life of John Wayne still matter today?
Why do you think it matters?
It matters because John Wayne wasn't just an actor putting on a cowboy hat and riding a horse for entertainment. Through the sheer force of his presence, he actively forged a national mythology.
He really became the lens through which America viewed itself.
Yes.
And the lens through which the rest of the world viewed America. I mean, even foreign leaders like the Japanese Emperor Hirohito and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev, They specifically requested to meet him when they visited the U.S.
Because to them, he was America.
Exactly. He embodied the country's most heroic ideals of rugged individualism, bravery, and self-reliance, while simultaneously reflecting its most exclusionary flaws and deep-seated prejudices.
He was essentially the entire American century, just compressed into a single 6'4" frame.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. Think back to the very beginning of this story. If a young pre-law student named Marion Morrison hadn't gone body surfing that one fateful day in Southern California, he wouldn't have broken his collarbone. He wouldn't have lost his football scholarship. He might have just quietly graduated and become a lawyer. He never would have moved furniture on a soundstage, and he never would have met John Ford.
Which forces you to ask a really fascinating question.
What's that?
Did the Hollywood studio system just invent the character of John Wayne to sell movie tickets? Or did the American public, living through the immense anxieties of the Great Depression, World War II, and the Cold War, actively need to invent a John Wayne?
Wow.
Did the culture just require an uncompromising black and white hero to feel secure in a rapidly changing world?
It really makes you look at that massive, imposing monument totally differently, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
When you step back, the legend is still there, casting a very long shadow over the culture. But now that you've been up close, now that we've seen the cracks, the hidden materials, and the sheer luck that built it, the monument is a lot more complicated and honestly a lot more fascinating than just a solid block of stone.